All right, Nathan, why'd you start this?
You came to me with the idea of a food podcast, and not from any planning. It came from, we booked a guest and sat down, and you were like, do you have any idea what you're doing? And I started talking. From Rixie, I'm Nathan Rivas, and this is Butter. I've been a professional cook for 3 years. This is a show where we talk to chefs, restaurateurs, and others about how they ended up where they are today.
From Rixie, this is Butter, the fourth podcast from Rixie, premiering March 2nd. Listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey everyone, this week is a little bit different. If you didn't hear it in the finale last week, we mentioned that we would be doing an after-show commentary about the production of the first season. From everyone at Feed the Jar and Rixie, thanks a ton for listening to Season 1. And now, on to the commentary.
How's it going, everyone? This is a little after show that we're doing with all the members in Feed the Jar, if everyone can introduce themselves.
I am your benevolent and omniscient, omnipotent, all powerful.
Oh,
Dungeon Master Daniel
thank God you're benevolent.
Walker.
That was good. I like that. All right.
So extra.
I am your favorite paladin, Reynold Hook, Steve Skeels.
He's aight.
You already know what it is.
I am your benevolent
Oh no, you can't just take my
bard,
words. You can't just take my words.
Purple Fiddler,
AKA.
a.k.a. Tanner Carlton. How's it going, everyone?
And I am your moderator for the day, Mason Carlton, a.k.a. Ranger Botag Greyloom. So we came up with a couple of talking points for the time after the show has already come out.
Let's give him a little timeline here. So basically, we started recording back in March of 2019, right?
Yep,
Right.
March 3rd.
March 3rd of 2019. And we finished up in August, am I right? Or June?
We finished up June.
Recording.
We finished recording June 16th.
June 16th. So there's a lot of space between the last time we recorded the last episode and between that time and now. So we've got a little bit of a different perspective on the process and what we've done and how we went about doing all of these things and making sure that the show was able to be where it's at now.
Yeah, I mean, so there was we started in March, and it took us about 3.5 months to get all 27 episodes recorded. We had no idea how many episodes it would be. We just assumed, hey, we're going to play until it ends, And I think we all hoped for an even number, but it ended up being 27. We actually had all the numbers wrong in our Logic files. It was it says episode 25, but it was episode 27, and it said 19, but it's actually 21. 21. But I think what we really want to do here today is just talk to you about kind of the ups and downs and the hardships of what it was like producing the show.
A little behind the scenes.
So, gosh, what first? What do we have here? The feedback. What's the feedback been like? Let's go around the table.
I mean, I've heard some good things. I run the Facebook page. It took a lot of effort to get the followers that we do have. And, surprisingly, some of those followers do provide me good feedback. Like a couple of them, like Wild Magic Surge. He helped sponsor the first couple of episodes when we first started and everything. He listens to every one of them. He gives me great feedback on what he thinks and your guys' character development and things like that. Every now and then I get a random, message on there too, where it doesn't quite pop up, it's like a request to see the message. So I click on it and they're like, hey, this show's awesome. This is one of the better ones that I've heard. And I'm like, yeah, it's aight.
It's pretty good.
It's aight. It's but it's always good to hear that kind kind of nice feedback and stuff. Surprisingly, I haven't heard much bad feedback besides the fact that we talk over each other sometimes.
Which we have taken.
What was that?
We have taken note of, and we're gonna try and not do that.
Yeah, we
anymore.
tried to take note of that a little early. We did that. We pre-released some of these first episodes to a couple of people I did to see if there's any feedback on what we're doing and how we can make it better. And I feel like we got a little bit of that feedback, and we were able to kind of make those changes a little bit in real time, even though it was like halfway through the season.
We definitely had close friends who really enjoyed it, and they reached out to us and told us that. I imagine, Steve, you can attest to that because you play with other people.
Yeah, so I definitely think I have probably gotten biased responses because I don't really check in on the other like social media or anything like that Dan might get to see.
Oh,
but,
I want to know we did get a 1-star review on Apple Podcasts within the first week of opening.
Nice.
So we are at 4.5 stars, but we don't shame you 1 star, man. We respect your opinion. Thank you.
You're
a real one.
It's interesting because when you get a bad review or a bad comment or a 1-star review, it's very different from what I expected, because when you hear other people say it, like, oh, this person said my hair looks bad or the audio doesn't sound right, you're like, oh, well, who cares? But then when you get that 1-star review or that bad comment, you're like, man, that really hurts my feelings. What is it? What is it about? Getting that. Like, what was so bad about the trailer that we got a 1-star review, and you've just got to. It's either competition.
Yeah.
Or it is somebody who really doesn't like us personally. Which, that's fine. They're entitled to their opinion. I just love the fact that it was so early that the show hadn't even started yet. And so we've got this horrible
It was just
remark.
the trailer.
Yeah, it was.
We didn't even get a written review. It was just a single 1-star review.
Incredible.
So
That's good stuff, guys.
Yeah, that really
More of that.
It's just really funny to be on the side of it where you're like, wow, that's really hurtful. You didn't even give us a chance. You just knocked us down. Because the funny thing is you need essentially 10 good reviews to negate the bad one. It's like getting a bad grade. You know what I mean? It's
yeah.
it's very hard to go up, but it's very easy to go down. So that was exciting from the first week. But
I will also say a couple things on that where a lot of people that we know obviously enjoy it. I have heard, again, a couple things like talk over each other, but one thing that I think I've always felt being a little bit, we'll get to that, but I wasn't involved in the editing and stuff like that, but I feel as though we had fun, we played, and stuff like that happens when you're in your group of friends.
It's true.
We're having a good time, and some of that may not translate well to these people that say, I'm going to give them 1 star. I don't like what they're doing, even if it's just for the trailer, even if it was for a full episode that they didn't like.
that they're having a good time.
Well, not necessarily that, but it's just if you don't get our humor or we got
exactly.
We all hang out. This is how we act just together anyways, right? So it's if you're not in on that, then maybe you're like, fuck this show.
And the thing is I think most people, especially when they're trying to do something that's partially comedic, we think it's funny, and so we assume that other people will, but they're not. Not everyone's going to love it, and that's okay. But that's this weird hill that you have to get over, especially when you start creating things. Is not everyone's going to like this, and you have to be ready to get chopped down pretty hard.
Especially if it's a D&D podcast. I mean, come on.
Which is there's going to be serious edgelords that are just putting us.
Also, everyone plays D&D a little bit differently, and if they don't like how you're playing.
Oh, they'll tear you down real quick.
Yeah.
Tanner, what about you, man?
I've heard that a lot of our close friends like it, and honestly, that is the only thing that matters to me, because we make it for us, we make it for our friends. I heard Steve is the funniest character, which congrats, dude.
Thanks.
I'll get you next season.
MVP stamp.
I appreciate it. I don't think I did much, but
What you just said it reminded me of something I heard just last week, on Without Fail with Alex Bloomberg from Gimlet. He had John Green.
Not a sponsor.
He had John Green on, the
John
guy
Green.
who does who wrote Fault in Our Stars.
Okay.
He's also a YouTuber.
Yeah, FIFA player.
And he said something that really resonated with me, which is like, it's not how many people listen to it, it's how many people love it. Because I think that's gonna grow more than just like, hey, if you get 1,000 or 1,000,000 streams, like great, but like how many people are gonna show up again to listen to it and actually enjoy it and send you messages like, this shit is fire. And we definitely got a handful of those. But I just thought that was really interesting because there are people that really do like it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really necessarily all about the numbers.
Yeah.
One thing to go back on what people said though, I just remembered this. I was actually in a theater with a bunch of friends, and the one woman came up to me afterwards. Shout out Gina. She's actually gonna release music on Rixie soon. She was like, said some inside joke about like, she was like, this isn't the worst theater you've been in this week. I was like, excuse me? Like, wait, what?
Damn.
And
She was like, dude, feed the jar. And I was like, oh my God.
And then you were
I was
like,
like,
I
my
haven't
bad.
listened to it yet.
I was like, I wasn't even there. No, we did so much playing that I literally don't even remember that happening.
Well, that is a great segue into the next point, is because, I mean, it took us 3.5 months to record. It took us equally as long, if not longer, to edit, because
Way longer.
with what we decided to do with sound design and music and like ridiculous internet references, that stuff took a lot of time. And that's what we weren't, I think, prepared for, is that for every hour that you're doing, for every hour of podcast that you get, it's double the amount of time to edit.
Correction, for every hour of D&D podcast that we get,
It's
an
5
extra
hours
3
of-
hours of editing.
Hanging out and eating pizza and drinking beer.
But I mean, so let's talk a little bit about that, Dan. It's just like the edit. So I mean, essentially what we would do is we would well, at least for the first few weeks before the show was even announced, we spent a couple weeks getting through, I would say, about the first 10 or 12 episodes.
Yeah. We really busted out a lot of the episodes really quickly. And then we like took a little break, to try to collect ourselves a little bit, and then eventually it caught up to us. And then we'd have to meet up every Sunday and sit down for 3 to 4 hours, depending on how long the episode was, and then just really just nail them out.
And it got pretty, sometimes it was really tight. It was like, this episode's coming out at 6 a.m. It's 9 p.m.
On
the
Tuesday.
day prior.
Yeah, on Tuesday.
And, we don't even have an episode name yet. And unfortunately, with a show that takes this much time to produce, like, we were really cutting it down to the wire sometimes. And I think we assumed going into it, like, oh, how long could it really take? It takes a fucking long time.
Can you guys real quick just put out a little bit on how much, because we've talked about this internally, I guess, but how much we actually spent hanging out and recording, and then how much you guys actually had to whittle down the episodes to, and then put in all the effects?
Tanner mentioned that a little bit. Like, we would spend like 5 hours in sessions and only get like 2 hours worth of recording.
2.5,
Like
3,
close to it,
sometimes.
Yeah, depending on the day and if we didn't eat or if we did eat,
I mean,
But
the usual turnaround was like, we show up at 12 o'clock on a Sunday. We spend 30 minutes talking to each other. We sit down, mic's hot, and we actually, in order to get back to where we were at for the last episode of the last session, we would just talk to each other for about a half hour.
yeah.
So immediately when we sit down, Dan and I have to find that cut where he yells into the mic and says, "Welcome back." So we're immediately just trying to find where that is.
I think I started using that as a segue to like be like, all right, we're gonna start now, because we just continue to talk.
Great
about
intro.
whatever for
Great
like
place to find.
a while. But yeah, I feel like that really like denoted the start after a little while. I feel like I didn't start that until like halfway through the season though.
It was at least probably like
It just really started to sit in, and like now it's like second nature.
I feel like it's been there the whole time personally.
Yeah,
but that's
you
just
can
me
never
on
get
the
rid of it
outside.
now.
But the process, just to get everybody like on the same page as how we were doing it, we'd sit down, we'd cut that first half hour out and find where we needed to be. Which I want to say, I really think that half hour is really helpful. Like warming up is way more important than you think, because when you come into sit down, it's like, okay, I'm on a mic now, I have headphones, this is what, you have to adjust to the room. But so we cut that out. We'd immediately start picking out songs for the episode. How long are those songs going to last for? Is it going to be 5 minutes? Is it going to be 10 minutes? Do we have to write
Scene changes.
We have to change the scene. Is there a place that we have to add an ad for another Rixie artist or another Rixie show? Is this part running too long? Is there people talking over each other that we have to cut out? And then it's very literally a matter of listening through it at about 125 or 150% speed to find the actual actions, right? So like, so-and-so swings a blade, so-and-so shoots an arrow,
Opens a door,
drops a cup of water, opens a stone door. Like we have a folder now of what has to be 300 or 400 sounds of like stone door, splashing water, thud on the ground,
spitting,
feet walking on wood, feet walking on stone, feet walking on metal, cat, dog, crowd, people laughing, kids laughing.
Yeah.
Like there's like an obnoxious amount of sounds that you have to have to adapt to every tiny little thing that Dan thought of on that day, which was 9 months before the edit that we're actually doing.
Yeah, and the thing about it is with those sounds, it kind of creates like a more lived-in environment. It feels more whole. You feel like you're more immersed into the area, and I feel like that's what we were really trying to go with. We wanted to build something that you could sit down and listen to, and yeah, it's a story you can get into.
It's improvised.
It's an improvised story, but this is a world that has lived-in people and lived-in creatures and music and sounds and things like that. And I feel like that's what sets us apart a little bit from some other podcasts. I know some of them do that out there for D&D stuff, but I feel like we tried to make it a point to say, okay, well, how are we setting the scene for each one of these to bring you to a different place, to bring you to a different dimension so you can feel like you're there? Yeah,
so like, for example, there would be, I think it was maybe episode 3 or 4, we find Rainier in the stinky closet.
Yeah.
We leave the building to like cold wind night.
Yeah.
And there'll be a wind sound. And then we have to go into the sewer. So we open the grate. There's a grate sound and we climb down the ladder. As soon as we get down to the ladder, the wind sound has to stop, right? And then their new music starts because it's a different environment. And then we also have to have trickling water. So it's like all these little things that you can miss. But and when you're listening to it, if it's not good, you notice it. But if it's good, you don't even think about it.
Yeah. You don't think about it, but you also feel more like you're there.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work.
Which brings us to the next point. This fucking experience was awesome.
It was awesome.
It was a lot of fun playing with you guys. And, given the levels of experience that you guys have, I'm not the most experienced at D&D. My first DM moment was DMing for you guys at my house before we even started recording this. And that's where that really started to
Good times.
become a thing where we were like, okay, well, let's start recording this to become something that we can listen to later on.
It's also simple back then.
Mason had never played.
I had never played.
Tanner had barely played, and Steve had played some back in college. But for the most part, you guys were fairly unexperienced at the game. And I am not the most experienced DM at this game by any means.
But I think you'd fool people, honestly.
I mean, maybe it's just
Fooled me, bud.
It was a well-written story by Wizards of the Coast. I will note that. Big props to Wizard of the Coast. Not a sponsor, but would like to be.
Would love it.
Would love it if you were a sponsor.
love
But no, big props to them on the work they did for Dragon Heist, Waterdeep Dragon Heist.
Great campaign.
Great campaign. I did a couple little things that made it kind of our own, but for the most part, most proprietary information, it's all theirs. I take no credit for some of the names and some of the stuff. I take credit for some of the names and some of the stuff, but they have a great storyline that helped build a basis for something that we could build off of.
The lead up to producing the first episode, or at least recording the first episode, the original plan was Dan was gonna DM, Tanner and Steve were gonna play, and as the audio engineer of the sessions, I was just going to be somewhat of a, like the peanut gallery.
Yeah.
And I think after 2 or 3 sessions where it was like
Test play.
essentially like test pilots
Yeah.
for the show, it was like, okay, this is not going to work with 2 people. Like, we're going to need at least a third. Like, a fourth would be great, but we'll take a third. And then, so the first time sitting down to actually play was on episode 1. And if you listen and you actually understand D&D, you can tell, like, I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? You know what I mean?
Well, let me also say this, that anyone that plays D&D knows it's very hard to have a really good experience with just 2 people in a party, because no matter what you do, it's just 2 people. They can only balance each other out so much. It's really hard for a DM to balance encounters for 2 people, because as soon as you have more than 2 enemies, you're outnumbered, and regardless of how strong you or they are, like, there's more actions going on for the enemies. So 3 people is a good number, and that was definitely a struggle where we had essentially an NPC helping me and Tanner in our test play sessions.
Yeah.
Where Dan rolled for another PC character basically, and it was different, and we couldn't do that for the real show. It was just to see, because once we played by ourselves, it's hard. And as you can probably tell from listening, we don't have a balanced party necessarily, which D&D doesn't need to have. But
you guys have
we're okay.
you have 3
Yeah.
fucking healers, so
It's not. No one's a dedicated healer, right?
no,
yeah.
but you
We
can
can all
have
heal.
3. You can have 3 support heroes. and
I'm
be
just
all right.
saying, we don't have the standard 2 DPS, a healer and a tank. We don't do that, which is typical. But I'm just saying, like, you don't need that in D&D, which is the greatest part about the game. But we needed a third, I think, to get a little bit more in there. So back to what you're saying, we brought that up, and that's how we are now.
Well, I think one thing that I think stood out to me going through the episodes, now that I've actually had the chance to listen to them, now we can see, and you guys can probably attest to this, there's a very stark difference between episode 1, where Steve, I know for a fact, had probably not ever talked on a mic before. Dan was in that same similar vein where it was like he had just started on a mic, and it was like you can see a pretty serious progression from 27 to 1, where it's like, yeah, let's roll a d20. You know what I mean? It's like it was very stiff.
Well, 2 things. One, not only, and I agree, for myself at least, I won't put anyone under the bus besides myself. I 100% agree, but also, as he said, there were a lot of questions on, what do I roll? What do I do? What is this?
Exactly.
That got cleared up, but also...
Still happening.
Okay, still happening.
Tanner
but-
still has no clue what's
All right.
going on.
Well, besides the roasting part, I'm just saying that's another thing that came up, but also the alcohol helped. I'll throw that out there.
Oh yeah, it definitely did.
It's a good point.
But yeah, I don't... I
You can hear
never done
sometimes
that.
in some episodes where we're just like, yeah, I'm just gonna swing an attack at it.
There was a few of those where I was just tired. let me
Yes,
say.
there was a
Yeah,
couple
we
episodes
started early.
worth noting that, like, Steve was traveling a lot. I remember it was probably May.
Yeah, you were traveling.
And
a lot.
we were like, hey, man, we really want to finish up this show schedule before a certain date. And he was like, all right, I'll show up. And, like, I'm always very excited to record. Maybe that's just because I like to hear myself talk. But there was definitely days where, like, Steve or Tanner or Dan would show up, and it's like, all right, yeah, I guess I'll roll a d6. It's like, okay, like, you're tired, I get it,
Oh, yeah.
but like, now with the hindsight that we have, it's really interesting how, like, that progression of learning how to talk on a mic and learning where to position it, and like the first few episodes, like not to throw you under
Dude,
the bus
I was
at
so
all.
bad about it. Don't even.
No. Like your voice was so bassy just because of the way you had it on your voice, and you
Oh,
learned
yeah.
how to use the
say-
right,
I was like this because I thought that's all I had to do.
Yeah, exactly. And so there was like a lot of like posts that we had to do to like adjust everyone's like minimal fuck ups of like learning how to talk on a mic, and like levels, dynamic levels. Those definitely got better over time.
I will say this is also the first podcast we really opened up with on Rixie too. So it's like this was our little bastardized child. Like,
For better or worse.
yeah,
I think for
better.
for better.
Yeah.
And I think that's a perfect segue into the equipment that we were using as opposed to now.
yeah.
I mean, Tanner, I think you can talk about that a little bit, just like the transition of
I was going to say
equipment.
that goes to what the point you were making about being experienced with like just talking on the mics. I mean, there was certain weeks where like depending on who had the crappiest mic that we had in that
Yeah.
room, we were recording in the middle of a music studio. So we didn't have any uniform miking techniques. We didn't have any of that.
I mean, we were literally using your stage mics for most of
the
it.
mics that I gig with to this day.
So
Which
that-
some of them you don't even want to use. When
I do
you're
want to
gigging.
note I had the good mic.
So
Well,
We
okay.
gave
I
Dan
always
the
got
best
the
mic
good
that we had.
So Dan, being the DM, talking the most, he had a mic called the Shure. It's a Shure SM7, which is a pretty decent, radio mic. And then Steve usually had a broken, dented SM58.
Because you knew I wasn't talking straight and do it anyways.
I was
No,
like,
that was probably the second. That was,
I don't know.
That was the mid-level third best mic
Yeah.
all around.
No.
Mason and I switched back and forth.
You had number 2. You had the Sennheiser.
No, I did not get the Sennheiser
I'm
every
sorry.
week.
We switched that off.
Which is what I'm saying. Like that's why the quality also changed. And I don't think you gave that enough credit because there's a very bad Audio Technica in the mix. That one of us would
what was
get
the
it
fourth
every week.
mic? There was
Audio Technica, SM58, Sennheiser, which is probably the second best, if not the best. Dan just doesn't know that because he thought he had the best mic every week.
It looked like it was the best.
No, he definitely. Other
Mine
than
felt like the best. It
other
had a
than
cover
the-
on it.
Yeah, it definitely is a podcasting mic.
It definitely is.
So there's that.
But what can I also say, besides just the mics, like me being a bit of an outside perspective on this type of thing,
Yeah.
you said we were in a studio, which was what you guys set up in just a room in your house.
Mm-hmm.
That you put up sound panels, we put up whatever we needed to make it sound better, but it was just a room we did. We had these mics that you had, and it was essentially like a makeshift room that not only did we do that, we would record music in, so every time we sat down to play, we have to rearrange everything, get it set up.
Sure.
We were using some tabletop
We were using
mic stands. We were using
Yeah.
some stage mic stands that
boom mics, yeah,
were from-
boom stands,
Again, the gigging stuff.
yeah, so
broken
it was,
boom stands.
It was basically what you guys had available when we just decided let's do this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and we also, just to set the stage, we had a So Dan and I went to Lowe's. We bought a foldable table.
We didn't have enough room on that tiny ass wooden table.
We had a tiny wooden table, and we were like, "That's not going to cut it." We went to Lowe's. We bought like a $40 foldable black table, where I drilled a hole in it so that we could feed our wires through. That could very easily cut you if you like rubbed it the wrong way. And we would unfold the table. We'd grab 4 random chairs from the house that would squeak like shit, and then
I'm pretty sure you can hear some of that squeaking in a couple of the
you
episodes.
can
100%.
definitely hear some.
Can you hear the train too?
And then you could hear our old roommate playing PS4 in the other room. If you listen closely in the first like 10 episodes, there's like Call of Duty or Breath of the Wild or something being played in the background. Or like dishes clanging like in the background because we're like right next to the kitchen in this like open air room. And it wasn't we played our whole first season in that room.
Yeah.
On a shitty table
Yeah.
with mismatched, not equally sounding mics.
Now look at us.
And now the setup is very different. We have a
Yeah.
dedicated room in the back
Mhm.
of the house
yeah.
that is treated pretty well. We have 4 of the same microphones. The cables are managed decently well.
We're
Nice mics, by
upgrading.
the way.
We're
No
upgrading.
holes in the table.
No
No
holes in
holes.
the table. Well, not yet, at least.
Table's
yet.
a little smaller, but much better.
Little smaller, very sturdy.
Very stable.
Not gonna
gonna fold on
There's
us.
still a train in the
Not
front
gonna
yard.
cock
but
my
other than
dice
that,
like it did before.
Yeah, we would roll, and you would just wait for it to roll to the dead spot of the table because it would just keep rolling, even in the trays.
Yeah.
But now, I mean, we've come full circle as far as quality is concerned. We're actually in like a nice dead room, and so yeah, the show's come a long way, and I think that's a nice little way to get to the point that we are working on season 2. We're not gonna talk about when it's coming out yet, but we are developing the second season.
It's a work in progress.
And if you like the show, obviously you can find us at Feed the Jar on Instagram and on Facebook. And if you want to find out more about Rixie, that's at Rixie.co on Instagram. Is there anything else before we cut it?
This was awesome. Love you guys. Had a great time. And I appreciate everybody listening because,
Yeah.
Yeah.
this was just a fun experience for me. As Mason said, first time really on a mic. I had a great time. I love playing D&D. And if anyone been listening to this, like, it's been great for everybody to actually enjoy what we've been enjoying for the past, 9 months ago, for the past 3.5 months that we played this every single week, multiple times a week. It's great that people actually cared about that. So
And if you're sitting there and you're thinking, oh man, this is great. I wish I could play. Don't think that you can't play. Just grab a couple friends, You can get the starter edition online for free. A lot of this stuff you can play for free. You get one set of dice and you can sit around a table with a couple of your friends and learn how to play.
pass the dice around if you have to.
Yeah.
Or just get an app on your phone.
Just it's real about just getting together with your friends and having a good time.
Yeah. Also, there are, and I know some people don't like this, but there are subreddits, there's Discords. You can find people to play with online. Might not be your cup of tea, but you can go and meet with randos and do whatever you got to get in the game if you're
But don't
interested.
say you wish you could play, because you can always play. If you got friends around, or even if you got the internet, you could find somebody to play with. That's the glory of this game. The community is so nice and so giving and so helpful, and that's what I really enjoyed about the D&D community. It's not just divisive. It's not separatist. It's not like people hate other people in this group. It's like everyone wants everyone to have a good time and be socially accepted. And that's also another point of D&D is social acceptance. You get to be yourself around a table with your friends
or be someone
enjoy
else.
that. Or be someone else.
Yeah.
I will also say, to follow up with that I'm sure Dan has as well. I have gotten other people that are probably not people I would have expected to play D&D to get into it and try it. Mason being one of them. Tanner, he was the one that got me to play with Dan in the first place.
Sick.
Because he was already in and playing before we were recording, was like, oh, come hang out with us. And that shit. Oh, I haven't played since college. Like, that'd be awesome. So I'm just saying, there are people out there you wouldn't expect. Just try it out. If you haven't, if you're interested in it, like Dan said, don't say you can't.
Just ask a friend.
It's a good time.
Thank you guys so much for sticking with us and listening to the show. And if you would like to check us out on social media, at Feed the Jar on Instagram, at Rixie.co on Instagram. And we will talk at you soon.
Feed the Jar is a production of Rixie. Produced, mixed, and edited by Mason Carlton and Daniel Walker. Hosted by Daniel Walker, Steve Skeels, Tanner Carlton, and Mason Carlton. Be sure to visit our website at rixie.co. That's www.rixey.co for more music and podcasts. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.